Hello there my beloved Batties, and welcome to another episode of Truth Behind the Tale, the series where I take a look at some of our most famous fairy tales and delve into their real world historical and cultural origins. And today we're going to be taking a look at the Wild Swans / the Seven Ravens. And as you can see, I have completely gone to town for today's video. This is one of my favourite fairy tales and I've been really excited to cover this one for a while, but alas I do not have any sweaters made out of nettle flax, so instead I decided to go with crow and raven feathers in my hair. Unfortunately I don't have any swan feathers, but the Seven Ravens, the Wild Swans, are very similar as we will see, so why not? The Wild Swans was written by Hans Christian Andersen and was published in the first collection of his fairy tales told for children in 1838. It's arguably the most well-known variant of the Arne Thompson fairy tale type 451, the brothers who were turned into birds. The idea of children being turned into birds is a very common motif throughout the world, mainly found in German fairy tales, but we also see it in tales from Norway and North Africa. We'll explore these first and then try and pin down a little bit of their history. The German variants include the 6 Swans, the 12 Brothers and the 7 Ravens, which after the Andersen tale is my favourite version. As you can see, the number of brothers and therefore birds varies quite drastically, as does the type of bird. Though there are some instances of ducks or geese, it's generally swans or ravens that take centre stage, and this may be due to the symbolism of these birds within the context of the stories and therefore the cultures themselves. Ravens in many traditional European cultures signify death and misfortune, and it's into this form that the brothers are usually turned if they are seen to have committed a wrong, such as in the 7 Ravens. The swan, on the other hand, represents purity and love, and can represent how, even though cursed, the brothers are still good enough at heart to maintain a form that reflects this. This is the case in Andersen's story in particular. The wicked stepmother initially attempts to turn the boys into ravens, but they are too pure and innocent at heart and instead become swans. Side note here, as an avid lover of crows and ravens, I feel like it's kind of a shame that they are always represented this way, even into modern day. They are beautiful and intelligent birds and they deserve love. Rant over. There's also some interesting cross-pollination, if you will, between the versions, as many of them contain elements of others. The amount of threads connecting not just these brothers into bird stories, but also other fairy tales is so mind-boggling, I will try to keep it as concise as I can. For example, in the 12 Wild Ducks from Norway, the story on the surface seems like a strange fusion between the Wild Swans and Snow White. The princess is wished for after 12 sons, she is white as snow and red as blood, she is called Snow White and Rosy Red, try saying that 5 times faster, and she happens across her brothers in a house in the woods and she does all their housework. Hello Momo, you come to join me? Hi. One of the most enduring visuals from Andersen's tale is of the virtuous Eliza weaving shirts from nettle flax in order to lift her brother's curse. In the 6 Swans, the magical shirts are actually made by the wicked stepmother and are the object that she uses in order to curse the boys. The sister then weaves the nettle-shirts to lift the curse, and just as in Andersen's version, she cannot speak a word. This also occurs in the 12 Wild Ducks, where Snow White and Rosy Red must weave shirts of nettle flax without laughing, speaking or crying. Similarly, other elements which appear in the Wild Swans can be found elsewhere. In Udea and her 7 brothers from North Africa, Udea is smeared with pitch so that her brothers will not recognise her. Andersen uses a similar motif in his story where the wicked stepmother smears Eliza with a horrible, smelly substance so that her father will not recognise her and therefore exile her from the kingdom. Many of the stories also mention the brothers saving their sister from being burned at the stake, or the stepmother herself is burned at the stake, and a king or prince then marries the sister. We also have the reasonably common motif in some of these stories that the brothers are not turned into birds by a parent or a step-parent, but they are instead warned away upon the news that their new younger sibling is a girl, which means that they may all be killed so that she can take the inheritance. Now this idea of a woman being the sole beneficiary might seem a bit odd in this very Western patriarchal context, but it actually connects to a real world instance which may account for at least the European versions. Analysis of the 7 Ravens in Germany suggests that the area and time in which it was collected is telling of a wider cultural shift which was occurring. Many men were drafted by kings to become soldiers and mercenaries and thus left home. This resulted in households making their daughters the heirs over the sons, since there was no guarantee that the sons would actually return home. However, by doing this, the families were able to exert more control over their daughters and to whom they would marry. The story element of a woman freeing her brothers from a curse may be indicative of the real woman's wish that her brothers would return home safe and sound and free her from this new control. Another suggestion is that it stems from the more general practice of ultimogeniture, or junior right, where essentially the youngest of a family will inherit rather than the oldest. There are also some other influences which have shaped the basis of all these stories. Jack Zipes contends that the Brothers Grimm speculated on a possible Greco-European origin, and there are also instances of overlap with French and Nordic oral tales from before the story was collected. Folklore scholar Stith Thompson mentioned that all of the variants follow a long history which begins with the Dolopathos tale from the 12th century. This story later formed part of the Knight of the Swan medieval heroic tale. The Dolopathos tells of a young lord who comes across a bathing young woman holding a golden necklace. She's generally taken to be a swan maiden, essentially a shapeshifter who can transform into a swan. They have a sextuplets. A what? 5 boys and 1 girl, each with golden chains around their necks. Ouch! But the lord's evil stepmother switches the babies with puppies and tells him that his bride had given birth to dogs. He punishes his wife by burying her up to her neck for 7 years. Meanwhile, the stepmother orders the puppies be taken into the forest and killed, but the servant assigned to the task instead abandons them. Again, another possible parallel with Snow White here. See what I mean about all these crazy threads? Years later, the servant finds the boys bathing in their swan forms, while their sister guards their golden chains. He steals the chains, which prevents them from turning back into human form, and all the chains are then melted down to make a goblet. However, since the sister can still take her swan form, she is able to tell the truth of the situation and save all of her brothers, except one. This is echoed in the later fairy tales, including Andersen's Wild Swans, where there's usually one brother who retains a single swan wing or remains a swan due to one of these shirts not being finished in time. Another potential link is the legend of the Children of Lyr from Irish mythology. Lyr had 4 children from his first marriage, 3 sons and a daughter, but his new wife became jealous of the affection that he gave them. She decided to take them away and kill them, but found that she couldn't do it, so instead she ordered them to bathe in a nearby loch and turn them into swans with a 300-year time limit before they could become human again. Lyr later found his children after he heard the swans singing with human voices, and they told him what had happened. After many journeys, at the end of their 300 years, the swans did eventually return to human form, albeit as 3 very old men and 1 very old woman. The interesting thing about the Children of Lyr angle is that the story itself comes from a time period shortly after the Christianization of Ireland. I didn't mention all the details of the story in that little summary, otherwise we would be here all day, but basically magic spells and druidic wands are mixed with Christian messages, including the idea that faith can free one from suffering. This may link with the potential idea which is being put forward by the University of Florida, which states that Andersen's version, The Wild Swans, may discuss the reformation of the Catholic Church. The 12 children can symbolise the 12 disciples and their father as God. This has added levity in Andersen's version, since technically as king he can choose his country's religion. Then the stepmother comes into the picture and corrupts their harmony like an agent of hell rising against the church. Eliza's requirement to endure the sharp, painful nettles in order to bring salvation to her brothers may represent Jesus and the crown of thorns, which she is blocked from completing her task by none other than an archbishop. This is potentially a link to how high-ranking members of the church could abuse their power. We don't know if Andersen intended the story to be read this way, or indeed how many of the variants he was aware of before he wrote his own story, though it's safe to say he was definitely aware of at least one of them. But this fairy tale is more than just pointing a finger at an origin or single source and confirming it absolutely. This is a spider web of stories, with each thread just as valid and interesting as the next. They create a collage of similarities with no definitive beginning or end, and no concrete evidence of which inspired which and at what time. But in all its forms, it showcases a tale which I personally admire as being unlike many others from its time period. There's no damsel in distress here. The sister is a strong woman with agency, and she endures her hardship not to save her lover or herself, but her family. It's for this reason why this type of story, The Wild Swans and the Seven Ravens in particular, is one of my personal favourite fairy tales of all time. Thank you very much for joining me for this episode of Truth Behind the Tale. I really hope you enjoyed it. Please give it a big thumbs up if you did. And please don't forget to leave me a comment and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It would be great to have you as part of our little Batty family. Also, don't forget to sign up to the Batty Brigade mailing list to get the latest news and a free starter library. And also please consider supporting me on Patreon so I can continue to bring you these videos. The next episode of Truth Behind the Tale will be coming on the last Tuesday of next month. Thank you very much for watching, have a nice day, stay safe, and I'll see you all again very soon in another video. Bye!